First of all, I want to begin by just telling you how truly privileged I felt to be able to make this trip. It was a very, very powerful trip. A little bit about the group, the Zionist Rabbinic Coalition. It is a group of rabbis from all the denominations. I actually got to speak with some people that, you don't get to speak to very often. I actually had a little one-on-one with even President Herzog. The conversation between him and me was about 22 seconds long. But I mentioned that, my son had made Aliyah right before Corona, and I was, because he wanted to hear what is the mood amongst, people back home, people there. And I said, I sum it up by the fact that I called my son and said, maybe you should come home for a few weeks while the war is beginning and you'll go back. And he said, Abba, I'm way safer here than you are there. And I got to tell you, I totally believe it. There's no doubt in my mind about it. I really want to put together a mission to go to Israel with the congregation in June. It's crazy for you not to go. This is a great moment in time to be there, an important moment in time to be there. But here we were, a group of rabbis from all the denominations, conservative, reform, Orthodox, and it was just a small group. There was 20 of us because they really couldn't take more than that. And in fact, when we went into the Gaza envelope area, we were in a tiny bus. And they had to take us out of that tiny VIP bus and put us in this little rickety, tiny, horrible bus. Basically for one reason. They said they don't want to make it a target for snipers or anything. We were in kibbutz Kfar Aza. And walking around the kibbutz, it's so weird because I'm seeing soldiers there. And residents without a helmet, without a vest, and we feel like a bunch of idiots. We're wearing helmets and vests. It's not done for photo op. It's a requirement of the government that we be there and that we be fully protected as much as possible. And they just don't want us to, be in harm's way. And I think it was part of the insurance for even the tourist carrier taking us through. I am always in awe of how, no matter what goes on in the life of the collective people of Israel, or sometimes just our little local life here in Dunwoody, how it connects with the Torah portion. And so I want to start with this. There's a verse in the beginning of this week's Torah portion, near the beginning, Vayigdal Moshe, Vayitzei el achav, Vayar b'sivlotam. Usually translated as Moshe grew up, he went out to his brethren, and he saw their sufferings. We did that. But the Midrash of Shmot Rabbah has an incredible comment on that pasuk. And the Midrash states, don't read that verse as Moshe grew up, but because he went out and saw the sufferings of his brethren, Vayigdal Moshe, Moshe became great. Literally because he decided to go out there. In other words, he could have stayed in the palace of Pharaoh, but he did not. He went out and he identified with the Hebrew slaves. He recognized them as brothers. Then on the Seifa, the second half of this verse, the Midrash says, Shahaya roeh b'sivlotam uvoche v'haya noten ktefav u'mesayea lekol echad ve'echad. He saw their suffering, he cried, he offered his shoulder and gave aid to everyone. There's no doubt I'm going to cry a few times. Ignore me, I'm fine. I've seen things, I have so many stories, and I really am fine. And I'm hoping I stop this because I really have so much I want to share. And I want to give some time for some Q&A. So I'm going to cry, it's fine. No army has faced a struggle like this. We're dealing with a state actor using guerrilla tactics. It's shifting to a tunnel war, as I said. South Gaza is being fought, much smarter, much more deliberate, much more specific way than the beginning of the conflict. And it's going well. In fact, I have to tell you, the war is really going far better than they anticipated. They thought they would lose over 1,000 soldiers by now. They still lost, a lot. But And lives are clearly changed, but it is making a huge difference. The morale of the troops is amazing. I spoke to so many soldiers. I met with the commander. There's the commander of the northern Gaza, the commander of the southern Gaza. And I was talking to him, and they're now going in a deliberate fashion, and the job is getting done. But what he said to me was, we all operated. In Israel, everybody talks about hakonceptia. The conception was wrong. Here's this commander, military commander, and he says, listen, we really thought we're bringing all these thousands. I mean, it was like 20,000 Gazans every day that were able to come into Israel to work. People that have a full belly and are able to provide for their family and build homes, that's what they're going to want to do. They're not going to have a stomach for terrorism. And he said, we were wrong. We know, in fact, talking to some of the residents of the kibbutzim, the people that they brought in that were doing agricultural work, building work in the kibbutz, some of them, nobody knows who, but in every single kibbutz, they knew where the generators were. They knew which homes had dogs, which didn't. So the conception was that if they were given a better life, they're going to be fine. These guys were taking intelligence, these people coming from Gaza. Some of them clearly were reporting to analysts in Hamas where everything was, how they knew where the base was. They had the names and pictures of commanders. They knew who was where. They knew what to take out. They hit in every conceivable place. The Nova Festival was an accident. They were not running, as I thought before, that this is a golden opportunity. Let's go hit the Nova Dance Festival. It's kind of Israel's version of Burning Man, if you will. Crazy trance dancing in the streets, like Woodstock vibe. One of the things I saw was the Nova Festival thing they built up in the Tel Aviv Civic Center. It was incredible, with video from what goes on at these trance festivals. But I keep losing my train of thought, but it's going to come back. So, seeing what these families are all going through in the ground, the stories are just unbelievable. Some main points I want to leave you with. After October 7th, Hamas is not going to deter Israel. They've already done their worst. And there's a concern that Hezbollah is not deterred either. And you have to understand that Hezbollah is much, much larger than Hamas, 5 times larger. They have also the same kind of massive tunnel infrastructure. We already have found, the intelligence officers were saying, we saw the plans of Hezbollah. It was clearly the same playbook. They were trained for this over a year in Iran. And it was the same kind of thing, and they were supposed to take over villages in the north. What was I going to tell you about the Nova Festival is that was a mistake. They saw all these kids in the field, and they thought it was an opportunity, and they started killing them and raping them and everything else. But what the plan was is they were supposed to go to Tel Aviv. They were supposed to continue on the roads, take over cars, kill families, and move into the center of Israel to give Israelis a sense that they're not safe anywhere. So Israel, they're going to win with Hamas. The war is going well. But the people, the 20,000 Israelis in the north, they can't go home until Hezbollah threat is dealt with. It's going to either have to be dealt with diplomatically, and there'll be an international force that will push them north of the Litani River. If that does not happen, they're not going back, and no country can live in a situation where 20,000 people, their residents, the tiny country, cannot be in their homes, and they're in their hotels. They're in hotels like Bobo in Tel Aviv. I went to the Hotel Bobo the first 2 nights to spend a day with Avi. The hotel is, they're taken over by essentially refugees. I mean, displaced Israelis. 1 floor near the restaurant is like an assisted living facility. There are women there doing knitting for soldiers and, doing the kinds of things, old ladies do, schmooze. Men are playing sheshbesh and having, hanging out. The floor where I'm staying in the hotel, they took this big lounge and turned it into a daycare facility. I mean, they were so touched that we were there. So Israel's different. I'm glad I stayed in that hotel. I'm glad I didn't stay in one of the fancy hotels, because those hotels don't have as many of the regular Israelis in them. And I got to really sit and schmooze with people and hear their stories. And the stories that we heard from survivors of the kibbutz, why are they telling? Somebody, cynically referred to this as trauma tourism. It's not trauma tourism, I got to tell you. It is therapeutic for these families to tell us what they've been through. I'm glad I was able to do that. We met with a guy, Chaviv Retegur, really upbeat about where the country's going. He's a major correspondent for the Times of Israel. He has a podcast. The guy's brilliant. You got to listen to him. He's really optimistic in that sometimes the crescendo, after the worst of the worst has happened, it often historically in Israel, and he gave a bunch of examples of this, leads to things like resolution and peace. Really, don't forget, the Yom Kippur War made it possible for there to be peace with Egypt. He said the old guard, the elite Palestinians, still believe we're replaceable. But 90% of the working class Palestinians don't believe that Jews are going anywhere. So when the 10% are soundly defeated, and they will be defeated, there's a day after. And I got a sense talking to Mark Regev, got to have lunch with Mark Regev. I mean, that was amazing. What's going to happen in the day after, and the pictures coming out are going to continue to be bad. Saudi Arabia, you'll notice not a single Arab ambassador of the countries that Israel has peace with or are in the Camp David, the Abraham Accords. They haven't left. In the midst of the war, they're not leaving. That should tell us all something very powerful. They could have left. They didn't. What's going to happen on the day after is Saudi Arabia is going to be footing the bill. They basically said they're in a wait-and-see mode right now. But if Israel defeats Hamas, and I have no doubt they will probably end up being the rebuilders of Arab society there. Jordan will probably help in administering it as well. When we met Bougie Herzog, he basically said the same thing. I was talking to, I'm not going to cry for this, gosh darn it, the survivors of Kibbutz Cholit. I was meeting with parents Jackie and Varon Vital, whose daughter Adi Vital of Kibbutz Cholit was murdered on October 7th. She's the one you probably heard about. They went into their safe room, put mattresses and everything over. She laid on top of her kids. She got killed. The mother got killed. The kids lived. She was killed on October 7th in front of her children. So the parents that were there, the grandparents, right? So they stayed in the guest house because they were supposed to stay with the family, but the daughter said, listen, Abba, Ima, you guys are going to enjoy Shabbat better. It's going to be noisy here with all the kids and everything. You get some rest. There's a guest apartment there. Just stay there. Well, the Hamas terrorists didn't have that address on their list. They totally skipped over that house. And my daughter saved my life with the stupid thing of, I just wanted you to get better rest instead of sleeping with us, sleep over there. Stories like that all over the place. By the way, they're willing to speak with the shul. I can't convey all the stories they conveyed. And hearing it from them is so much more powerful than hearing it from me. The attack that started in Kfar Aza, and I stood at that fence, one of the pictures I put on Facebook, and I put a tiny amount of them. That's the place where the terrorists came through, thousands of them, through the fence. The security team, the Kita Konanut, came under attack. You heard all the stories. You saw the pictures I posted, but 64 of the people from that kibbutz were killed. 30 were kidnapped. The the security detachment of the kibbutz all got killed. Some of them were released after in that first round of people being released, but several of them are still in the hands of the terrorists. And some of them are still probably alive and, living in these dark tunnel, horrible situation. I mean, really going through a Holocaust. 5 members of the Kutz family was murdered. This father of the Kutz family in this kibbutz, Kfar Aza, he was in charge of their annual kite festival. This was the thing they did in the kibbutz. They put together, the kids made these beautiful, colorful kites and flew them high over Gaza, really to not just be showing the diversity, the beauty of their kibbutz, but also even as a message to Gaza. Life can be good. He's gone. We met a real superhero, Rami Davidian, who some of you may have seen his YouTube video. I posted that as well. He personally saved, I'm not sure if the number was over 300 or over 700. His village, his little settlement of Patish, is just a kilometer away from people running away from the Nova Festival. There's a big wadi there, like this big drainage, kind of like ditch there, where the kids were running and they were laying down, pretending to be dead if they could, or often dead. He knew the area very well. Why? Because he was a person that delivered fuel for the orchards that are around there. And after many hours, he's rescuing. He keeps going back because the army, we don't know what the hell happened, but the army was not around. For 11 hours, people are in their safe rooms. There's no police. Well, the reason there's no police is they attacked the police station. They took out the base. There was no communication. There was no central communication. And so some of the people were texting him because somebody's niece was running away from the festival, and the only person they could think of is Rami. And all of a sudden, Rami's cell phone number in Israel started being texted to everybody. And he was getting, I saw his phone. I'm sitting next to him eating dinner. Thousands and thousands and thousands of texts. Come back, save me. Nobody's coming. We're getting killed. I mean, the scenes, the stories, just beyond horrible stuff. And so he would go back after a while. He had other people from the kibbutz that were, not the kibbutz, from this little village area. They were kind of setting up a thing. He would have kids on his car roof, on the hood, shepherding them back to an area with another car. They would take him back to his home. He'd come back for another group. And he kept coming back over and over again. One time he comes back and he sees several Hamas terrorists driving around this group of Israeli kids, keeping them corralled in there. And he's timing on his watch how long it takes them to make the circle. It was 90 seconds. So he worked out in his mind how we're going to get out of there. He goes to one group and there's Hamas terrorists around these girls, shirts ripped off. I mean, just horrific scenes. And he says to them, he was a volunteer with the Palestinian Authority, so he learned Arabic. He's trying to help them to build a better life. So he had enough Arabic. He says to them, I am a Muslim like you. He's not a Muslim. And he says, the army is on their way. They're coming right now. Get out of here in 2 minutes or they're gonna kill you and they're gonna kill me too. That was enough to convince him. Give me the girl. They had this one girl they were holding on to. They were ready to attack. He says, give me the girl, I'll take her. And for some reason they listened. He got the girl, they drove away. And then he comes back, and that was after when there was this 90 seconds of them driving around. So what a story, and unbelievable. In fact, he even said this to me. I couldn't believe this. He said, I got calls from soldiers. He said, we're here now. Can we come? He says, don't come. It's too dangerous. Because he said he was glad he wasn't armed. He said if he was armed, he would have been weighed down and he wouldn't have gotten through. It was just his presence of mind, knowing the right thing to say. President Herzog said, listen, the issue is really terror. You get rid of terror and you have peace. Israel is rebuilding. It's finding its strength. Everywhere you see in Israel, even there's this one woman that's always graffitied. It's a little caricature of a girl in the Florentine area of Tel Aviv. And so she shows up in graffiti all over the place. And the picture I took with Avi and I standing in front of it, that's that same girl's face, but underneath Yachad Ninatzeach. Together we will win. And it's everywhere. Everywhere there are pictures of the Chatufim, the kidnapped people. Every billboard, the country is unified in a way that is so powerful to see. Mark Regev had a couple of interesting thoughts. He's one of the senior advisors with the government. So, the campaign in Gaza, very different. Before, in previous attacks, we were happy, he said, just with a ceasefire and deterrence. Israelis cynically called it mowing the lawn every couple of years. This time it's very clear to everybody they have to dislodge Hamas. This is even the position of liberal leaders like Yossi Beilin. We have to totally destroy Hamas. Mark Regev lamented, it hurts him when he watches on TV, and I know we're all going crazy watching the TV news. It is doing such a horrible job. What journalists never show us, it's maddening. But he says when they interview, like the head of the hospital in Gaza, or they video the man on the street, he said, could you imagine going to Cuba and a journalist asking them, what do you think of Castro? We love Castro. Of course they're going to say we love Castro, because if the director of the hospital in Gaza, who is a member of Hamas, he knows exactly what's going on there. He knows where the tunnels are. He sees them all the time. He can't say any of it, because if he does, it's real ramifications for him or his family, even if he's not a true believer in Hamas. So journalists in Gaza have to reflect the Hamas interests or else. Our journalists, what's so maddening, take their interviews as if they are true. It's the civilian in the street, the man in the street talking about. They know exactly what they have to say, and they know they got hell to pay if they don't. So as Hamas loses power, the hope is perhaps they can be more honest. The conception that the war is creating another generation of Hamasniks, Mark Regev said, is wrong. It's absolutely not true. And this is, again, the soundbite we see in the U.S., right, when they're telling Israel, stop killing so many people. By the way, Israel, they think the estimates are they're killing about 3 civilians for every terrorist. That happens to be 5 to 6 times better than the United States Army has ever done in similar urban fighting. So they're trying to avoid killing the civilians. But he says it's not creating more Hamasniks. It's going to do exactly the opposite. He really believes that the majority of Palestinians are scared to death of Hamas. The political elite in the Arab world doesn't like Hamas. They want Israel to win, but they can't say so, and they're not going to say so. And if we win this war, and I have no doubt we will have Arab allies. The important thing to realize, even during the war, they're not pulling their ambassadors. They're not pulling their people. That's huge. So final thoughts and a little Q&A, and I'm sorry we're going longer, but I had to share this with you. Israeli society is united in ways that are unbelievable. Everybody's volunteering. Everybody is all in. Beth Shalom, just so you know, we spent $8,000 of the money we raised. It went to purchase tactical uniforms, ceramic vests. I gave away another couple $1,000s worth to families that I met. I still have about $3,000 left I haven't spent. We'll find a way to spend it. I'm going back in 3 weeks, by the way, with a Federation mission. The Hamal visit. By the way, I don't know how many Israelis know. Do you know what Hamal stands for? I did not know that. I'm thinking it must be Chesed or Hitnavut or something. No, it means a war room. The volunteer center is the war room. And anything that they get called that they need, they show up, they find the stuff. It's amazing how the country is coming together. So the spirit of Israel is very, very strong. One last little bad thing I have to share with you. I went to Sderot, small little city, very, very close to the border of Gaza. We had a briefing with the police, and we were in their main security room where they have these big, big screens. And they showed us some of the footage that they thought we little Americans could handle. The video is unbelievable. There are so many things that I can't even describe them. There was one family coming home. They drive in their car right behind Hamas terrorists that are in a pickup truck wearing Israeli uniforms. So they don't know who the hell they are. And, there's sirens, and they think they're following the army. And then these guys spot the family. They drive around the circle, and they shoot up the car. And the 4-year-old daughter walks out of the car. Mother's dead, father's dead. She's just walking there alone. And you think for 4 minutes, she's alone in the world. She's got nobody. She walks off into a bush where I'm watching this live video. It was recorded, a live video. And they go around a second time. They shoot up another family. The girl's still okay. This girl is rescued ultimately. She's living with her uncle somewhere. But the final impression is this. The country is very strong. Israel is not even using a tiny percentage of its power. This Gaza commander of the North Gaza, there was a very interesting interchange between one of the survivors telling us the story, and he was saying to him, this was just an unscripted moment. There were a lot of unscripted moments. He says to the soldier, I'm not coming back. How can I come back? How can I let my kids live here? And he says to him, you have to come back. He says to him, when we know we've won, when you feel comfortable coming back. And I asked him, this commander, I said, so what's the plan to do different this time? He says, the answer he gave to me is not a very happy answer. He says to me, listen, it's not us, it's the politicians. He says, if it were up to me right now, I'd clean the whole damn area out, get rid of all of it. They can all go live in Sinai, I don't care where they live. We can't live like this. But the politicians aren't going to let us do that. But they're going to win. They're going to defeat Hamas. I don't know if all these survivors of Kibbutz Kfar Aza, Kibbutz Be'eri are going to be able to emotionally go back, but a lot of them are going back. They're going to rebuild their houses 3 times bigger than they were before. The indomitable spirit of the Israelis, unbelievable. And with that note, I've told you, did I ever feel endangered? Yeah, the only time I felt endangered twice. One was when I am walking around the kibbutz, and every few seconds, boom, this huge boom, but it's outgoing artillery. So, it's because we're right near it. And then at one time, I hear machine gun fire, and I think that's not good. Why am I hearing machine gun fire? I shouldn't be that close. It was a helicopter hovering above using its machine gun, whatever it is. And we just kept hearing smoke rising in Gaza. I'm in a war zone. Holy camoli! And when you go to play, when your kids play in a park, what's the first question? Don't get lost. I'm right here. Blah blah. People in those kibbutzim or around Sderot, what is the first thing a parent does when they take their kids to the park? Where's the nearest shelter? Because I got 6 seconds to get into that shelter if the siren goes off. By the way, the second time I realized I was in more danger than I was, most of Israel completely safe, but I get in New Year's Eve and I'm in a couple blocks away from where Avi lives, and I was so exhausted from the flight. I go to sleep. I'm not even going to stay awake for New Year's, for Erev New Year's at midnight. But apparently the Hamasniks decided to launch a ginormous barrage, which Avi said was the biggest one he'd ever seen. I do not have any recollection of it. I remember hearing some sirens, turning over for a moment, and falling right back to sleep. And Avi texting me in the morning, Abba, where'd you go? Well, what do you mean, where'd I go? First of all, the protected area in the hospital is the stairwell, and the hotel stairwell, and it's full of like garbage because that's junk is all over the place. I probably would have stayed, but anyway, the point is that was one moment. But walking around the kibbutz, when you're hearing, rockets can go off, and we were briefed that if you hear the siren, run to that shelter or just drop to the ground and put your head over hand over your heads. We had to wear the helmets. And I have to tell you, I wear this helmet for a couple of hours. I don't know how long we were there. They're heavy. They're uncomfortable. And these soldiers that are wearing these things hours every day, unbelievable. So despite those things, if we go back, if we take a little mission ourselves from the shul in June, we'll see a lot of the same tourist stuff, hopefully. We're not going to go into that area. It's not going to happen. Maybe it will. The war might be over and we might be able to go back. But I think being there and seeing the indomitable spirit of the Israeli people is so energizing. It so touches your heart. It is phenomenal what is going on there. They're going to win. The country is incredibly put together now. They're going to have to deal with Hezbollah one way or the other, but they can do that too. That doesn't satisfy the families who are losing soldiers or who are injured, or the people I met people their relatives are still captured in Gaza. And how they had the strength to tell us their stories, unbelievable. But it meant something very powerful to them, and it was very powerful for me to be there. Questions, please.
Rabbi, on all the people that you talk to, either military or politicians, did any of them address with you personally the ultimate question is, you have to defeat terrorism, and then we have peace. You can't defeat terrorism as long as Iran continues to exist in its form with its activity.
Iran is willing to fight Israel down to the last Palestinian. Iran is not going to fight. Iran is scared to death. By the way, and I have to say this too, the Biden administration, I don't want to get into politics, could not be better in what they've been doing. The sending of the aircraft carrier, the battle group, the nuclear submarine, the statements, the vetoes in the Security Council, President Rashid Tlaib would have been a disaster. Even the thought of that. But Iran is deterred by the U.S. being there, and Iran is not going to. Iran wants all the damage over there. They don't want the damage in Iran. So I think that's manageable. It's not perfect, but I think it's manageable. Yeah. Gail? I don't think it's true. I thought so before I went. I'm not sure either, but I got to tell you, if Israel loses, that's going to be the case. Israel's not going to lose. There was some polling, and I don't remember the survey, but it was the kind of survey you'd expect that, we anti-Israel and et cetera. But there was a real sense that underlying, it's the way you phrase the question when you take these surveys. Could you live with Israel and if you had real autonomy and blah, blah. I think the key is winning the war, and I think a lot of that's going to shake out okay. I think Israelis think, in some ways, it depends who you speak to. Yeah, it's Elections definitely have consequences. And, by the way, Bibi's not running this war. Gallant is running the war. Bibi's already in full campaign mode, and his Facebook farms are putting out all the, that we absolutely have to live, and you better vote for me, because if you don't, there's going to be a Palestinian state, and this is going to happen over and over again. I mean, that's his talking points that he's using. There is very deep concern about American politics. But generally speaking, the sense is both sides of the aisle very, very supportive. What's going on in the college campuses, I think, scares Israelis. I mean, it scares me, what the next generation is going to be like. But I have to leave you with this other thought that, Chaviv said, Retegur, Israel, in some ways, I mean, it can make all of the equipment that it right now buys from America. They know how to make all those missiles. They know how to make the Iron Dome interceptors. If they have to do this on their own, they're still going to do it on their own. Thank God they've got America solidly behind. And that's been very, very powerful. And I think it's going to be okay. I really do. Yeah, please, Stuart. It's probably good we don't know. Okay, so the question was, what's going on with the stories about them flooding the tunnels? Is it working? Is it not working? There's a fear of what if the hostages are down there? I mean, it's almost inevitable that some of the hostages have ended up getting killed by what Israel is having to do. I mean, the destruction is immense. The reason they're doing this destruction is so they can get to the tunnels. I mean, Hamas really had planned all the booby traps, and I mean, there are stories. One family was telling me about, after they killed somebody in the kibbutz, they booby trapped her body with stuff to try to blow up soldiers, and thank God it didn't happen. No, in fact, it would have happened, but for one reason, the grenade or whatever they attached didn't go off. It was a dud. It saved this person's life. He told me that was another miracle that he survived. But the flooding the tunnels, from what I'm seeing in reports, and of course, folks, for everything I'm saying, Mark Zimmerman, Rabbi in Dunwoody, I mean, I don't know what the heck's really going on. There's concern that is it going to destroy the aquifer in there? There is a labyrinth. I mean, 300 kilometers of tunnels. It's amazing. Think of what Gaza could have been had, after we pulled out, they had taken all that international aid. What there could have been Singapore there. Beautiful beaches in Gaza. So I think they are doing some of the flooding of the tunnels in areas where they just think it's the right decision. I asked the question of, well, can't the water then be drained and you have a tunnel again? I didn't get a clear answer about that. I'm not exactly sure. But they're doing a lot of things that we don't know about, obviously. They say the munitions people are having a lot of fun coming up with ingenious ways to blow up tunnels. Yeah. Beth Ann? So I am hearing that it is very tough bringing in actual stuff, because if the customs see too much, the problem is some of the people have been schlepping a lot of things in, and I'll get to you in 1 second, and that what's ending up is some of people are creating these pop-up stores with smuggled goods and everything else. So like for the vests, the tactical vests we bought, we had to have a letter from the Army, It had to have, the serial number of what they needed, the letter from the commander, what we need. And if you bring in a little bit, you might be able to pull it off. But I know one guy that came in with 17 duffel bags. He's only got 8 of them so far. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Do you have your own plane? Okay. So you had all the documentation that you needed. That's the issue. Talk. Okay. Right. In other words, you can't go to REI and just clean out the shelves and bring it over. Yeah, okay. Okay. I unfortunately know a lot of stories of people that were not successful in bringing stuff over. Yeah. Yeah. But it's all good. I mean, it's good we're all doing what we can. Please, Alan, and then we'll...
Did you say that Hezbollah had a similar plan that was not executed? Can you speak to that?
Right. So Israel, once the war started, they pulled everybody out of the northern communities. Rosh Hanikra, up in Etzba Galil, the finger of the Galilee that goes up in there. I forget all the names. Shlomit. I mean, a lot of areas that were just pulled out. And they have apparently found intelligence from Hezbollah of this. It was obvious that the plan was hatched out. It was identical. This idea that these are two different groups that don't talk to each other is wrong.
So why was that plan not executed?
Because Israel pulled out and didn't let them. There was the army was up there. So there may be 300,000 people that were called up. 200,000 of them may be around Gaza. There's 100,000 soldiers in the north.
So the plan was not for it to be simultaneous?
That's a great question. I don't really know the answer. But for whatever reason...
Maybe it was to redirect them south.
Yeah, I think that might have been it. They thought they would redirect everybody south and then they'll flood the north. And it didn't happen.
Rabbi, just a comment. I think people don't necessarily realize when you talk about Hezbollah being so much larger, Hamas is almost exclusively a terror organization. They steal aid, international aid, and they divert it from schools and hospitals to build tunnels. Whereas Hezbollah is more ingrained in the fabric of Lebanese society, that Hezbollah, in addition to developing a terror network, they also build schools and clinics.
Yeah, that's how they establish credibility with the people. It's also Hezbollah's in the government. Yeah. It's a tougher situation, but in some ways it's easier too. It's not dense urban combat. It's an internationally recognized border. There's no occupation of Lebanon. It's noon. Okay, Wendy, and then we'll dive in. I'll schmooze with y'all in Kiddush. I know there's so much to talk about, but we'll dive in quick. No chance. No chance.
But I also read is that Sinwar and Bashar aren't on the same page, and they're operating separately. So I don't know how much you know close to is Sinwar. I think that is just different because the extent of how much they share and don't share, and how much they coordinate and don't coordinate.
I mean, they're competitors. They're trying to show we're bigger and badder than the other guys are. Yeah.
They're calling for their brethren in Hezbollah and in the West Bank and everybody else to join up and help them, and it's not really happening.
The Houthis was a surprise, by the way. Israel did not expect that Houthi missiles would be flying up the Red Sea. And by the way, the U.S. military has been, intercepting those. That's also a surprise. They were surprised. In war, there's always surprises. Yeah, okay, to be continued. I'm glad y'all are here, and I hope I did a tiniest amount of justice to everything I've been through the last 4 days, but there's more stories to tell, I can tell you that. We're going into the Let's Daven Musaf fairly quick.